I'm honestly not much of a parse monster. I use parses occasionally to double check that I'm keeping up with where my damage should be at my item level, but I'm never stacking buffs or eating mechanics to try to go for 99s or anything. And I'm usually also doing raid callouts, so parsing high would just be doubly hard for me. But I always look at logs for my raid fights, and the reason isn't this number, but it's this number. If you don't know what you're looking at, this is known as a log. It's done through Warcraft Logs, which is a website and application that tracks everything that goes on during a raid or a dungeon and just sort of spits it out to you. Logs have a ton of useful information, but what we're looking at today is this bit called Uptime. We could talk about it at a more basic level, and then we'll get to stuff you can actually apply. So what this number means is it's the percentage of time during the fight that you were either casting a spell or on your global cooldown, which is also known as your GCD. Basically, it's what percentage of the fight you were doing just anything. When somebody asks me how they can increase their DPS in raid, this is always the very first number I look at. The number one cause of lower than wanted DPS in a boss fight is always low uptime. People spend more time than they think doing nothing, especially in complex fights. It's unfair to say they're doing nothing, but oftentimes low uptime is caused by a player focusing on things other than keeping their rotation up. It could be mechanics, positioning, health totals, just anything else. There's a lot going on in a lot of fights in WoW, so finding time to do damage to the boss can be kind of difficult. But if damage is something you're struggling with, this is the most likely culprit. We could talk about some ways to maximize your uptime, and the trick is easy as ABC, always be casting. Or, hitting. Let's talk about how to do this. The first thing I'd suggest people to focus on is their movement. If you're melee or a beast mastery hunter or something, you probably don't have to worry too much about this one, but for any casters out there, you have to be really mindful of when you're moving too much or moving for no reason. You want to position yourself well for whatever mechanic you're doing or whatever mechanic might be coming up next, and then let it rip. There's nothing wrong with planting your feet and being a turret as long as you're already in the right spot. You've got to plan ahead and position proactively. Here's what this looks like in practice. You can see I get hooked in by Gore Chop and then I set myself up so I'm already in the gap in the wall of hooks. I'm able to get Tyrant, Soul Rot, and 2 Hand of Gul'dans out before I ever have to move again. All because I just picked the right spot and then I was able to just completely become a turret. Like I said, plan ahead, be proactive, and then you can just let it rip. The next thing you want to work on is to learn and understand your filler abilities. This is something like Shadow Bolt for a Warlock or Demon's Bite for a Demon Hunter. Your filler ability is something with low or no cooldown that generates a resource. It's going to be your go-to when you really just don't know what else to do. It's good to have a button as a sort of when in doubt button, something you know you can press and just be doing some amount of good for yourself. If you find yourself with some time and aren't sure where you're at in your rotation or you're not sure what to press, just find a good button you can default to. You'd rather cast a spell than 0 spells. That's a non-zero amount of DPS. You should always be casting something. The ultimate goal to maximizing your uptime, however, is having your entire rotation down to muscle memory. Obviously, this can sound daunting and it definitely takes time, and it also might sound like some get better by getting better type of advice, but it really is the real way to make sure you're always doing something relevant during a fight. If you clicked on this video, you're probably already in the mindset of wanting to improve, and nothing helps you improve faster than just practice. There's nothing wrong with sitting on a training dummy in your Covenant Hall and just getting some reps in. Once you have your rotation down, you should be able to have a grasp of what you just cast, what comes next, and sort of hold that information in your brain while you move around in a fight. Icy Veins has some great guides for every class's rotation, and I highly suggest checking those out. Thanks for watching, and I hope these tips can help you bump those numbers a little bit. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in Azeroth.